During that time, Forest Kingdom had a wise ruler, the renowned Augustus Virtue Emperor. This emperor was not only intelligent and virtuous, governing the nation with great skill, but also an exceptionally handsome man. Because of this, every woman in Forest Kingdom dreamed of entering the palace to be close to him. However, despite holding the empire in his hands, Augustus Virtue Emperor was indifferent to matters of love. Though his harem was said to have 3,000 beauties, only one noble consort and 2 concubines ever received his favor, and the position of empress remained vacant. Everyone believed the future empress would surely be one of these 3, but unexpectedly, during a royal tour, Augustus Virtue Emperor brought back a peerless beauty. The storyteller began narrating with enthusiasm. I listened intently. Palace intrigue like this always sparked my imagination. Her name was Snowy Lyra, and she was truly a beauty who could topple cities and kingdoms, a woman of unmatched grace. The storyteller became increasingly animated. I scoffed. This man must have never met Snowy Lyra, yet he spoke as if he had seen her himself. The emperor cherished her deeply. As soon as she entered the palace, he bestowed upon her the title of Lyra Grace. Truly a perfect match of talent and beauty, destined by the heavens. 3 years after Lyra Grace entered the palace, the emperor never laid eyes on any other concubines. She was the most favored in the harem, envied by every woman in the land. Yet, just as the emperor was preparing to crown Lyra Grace as empress, a great calamity struck the Forest Kingdom. The storyteller's voice suddenly turned mysterious. The immortal haven fell silent, everyone eagerly awaited the next part of the story. Seeing their expectant faces, the storyteller seemed pleased and continued. The Forest Kingdom, once prosperous and thriving, was suddenly struck by a plague one night. In less than a month, countless lives were lost. The entire nation was engulfed in mourning. But this wasn't a natural disaster, it was man-made. And the source of this calamity was none other than Lyra Grace, who was about to be crowned empress. Upon hearing this, the crowd erupted into murmurs. I, too, was filled with curiosity, impatient to know what happened next. It turns out that Lyra Grace, famed for her unparalleled beauty, was actually a demon in disguise. Come to think of it, how could any mortal woman possess such extraordinary looks? And to captivate an emperor as virtuous and ascetic as the Virtue Emperor to the point of obsession, it had to be sorcery. The revelation of Lyra Grace being a demon was entirely the will of the heavens. It said that one winter afternoon, Lyra Grace was admiring flowers alone in the imperial garden. Standing before a withered peony bush, she blew gently, and the dry branches instantly bloomed into a massive white peony. Unfortunately, this miraculous scene was witnessed by a palace maid. Thus, Lyra Grace's secret as a demon was exposed. She is not a demon. I was listening intently when a familiar voice interrupted. Instinctively, I turned to look and nearly jumped in surprise. Unbeknownst to me, the Emperor Lord had taken a seat beside me, and it was he who had spoken. How does the Emperor Lord know this? I asked absent-mindedly, my mind still engrossed in the storyteller's tale. Continuing with the plague, the storyteller resumed, both the court and the people of the Forest Kingdom unanimously believed that Lyra Grace's sorcery had caused the disaster. They demanded that the Virtue Emperor punish the demon consort and restore the nation's order. Spiritual masters from across the land gathered in the Forest Kingdom's capital, preparing to join forces to eliminate the demon consort and save the nation. What will become of Lyra Grace? What decision will the Virtue Emperor make in this dire situation? Stay tuned for the next chapter. With a triumphant slap on his meng-pon drum, the storyteller concluded his session, leaving behind a cliffhanger that made me choke with frustration. This man was truly infuriating, always stopping at the best part and leaving us with his usual line. To find out what happens next, tune in for the following chapter. I wanted nothing more than to punch him. My irritated expression didn't escape the Emperor Lord's notice. He casually remarked again, "She is not a demon." "How do you know?" I asked reflexively. The Emperor Lord remained silent. It dawned on me, 2,000 years ago, before I was even born, the Emperor Lord had already ruled the heavens. What could there possibly be in this world that a celestial being wouldn't know? So, what happened to Lyra Grace after that? If she wasn't a demon, did the Virtue Emperor save her? I immediately asked, my face full of anticipation. No. In the eyes of the Emperor Lord, a trace of pain flickered, his voice slightly choked. He looked at me, took a deep breath, and said, not only did Virtue Emperor not save her, but he personally handed her over to the Taoist, watching her being burned alive. What? I angrily slammed the table and stood up, furiously exclaiming, Virtue Emperor is truly despicable. Didn't he claim to love Lyra Grace to death? How could he be so heartless? The Emperor Lord remained silent. I nudged him, isn't that right? The Emperor Lord flinched slightly, then silently nodded, softly replying, yes, he shouldn't have harmed such a kind-hearted woman. Satisfied, I nodded and continued to comment, if I were Virtue Emperor and truly loved someone, I would protect her at all costs, even if it meant giving up the entire forest kingdom. The Emperor Lord suddenly raised his head, a strange glint flashing in his eyes. After a moment, he asked, what if you were Lyra Grace? What would you do if Virtue Emperor treated you like that? Me? I was taken aback. I had never considered such a scenario. Surely, I wouldn't have such poor judgment as Lyra Grace, choosing a heartless man like that. Still, I seriously pondered for a while and honestly answered the Emperor Lord's question, if I were the unfortunate Lyra Grace, I think I would be quite content with this outcome. The Emperor Lord looked at me in shock. Why? Because an early death brings early release. As soon as I finished speaking, the Emperor Lord fell silent. Think about it, this lifetime, she chose the wrong person. And now, she can't remarry, so her only hope lies in the next life. By dying, she might be reincarnated and marry a good man. I explained. Do you really think so? The Emperor Lord asked skeptically. This is assuming I were Lyra Grace. I'm a genuine demon, unlike her, even if I were burned to death, I wouldn't blame anyone. I shrugged. Would you hate that man? For some reason, the Emperor Lord seemed unusually curious today. As a demon who has cultivated for 2,000 years, I could only patiently answer his questions. No. The Emperor Lord's eyes suddenly brightened, seemingly filled with joy. This puzzled me greatly. I am not Lyra Grace, and he is not Virtue Emperor, so what is there to be happy about? Because I would no longer love him. I slowly uttered the second half of my sentence, then was surprised to see the light in the Emperor Lord's eyes extinguish, leaving behind a dense layer of stillness that made it impossible to discern his thoughts. After a while, the Emperor Lord gave a faint smile, his gaze seemingly returning to its usual calmness, and said to me, it's getting late, Lyra Grace. Let's go back. I watched the retreating figure of the Emperor Lord and came to a conclusion, the Emperor Lord was trapped in a web of infatuation. And the person who stirred the Emperor Lord's heart, if I guessed correctly, must be the beauty in the painting mentioned by Immortal Fox. Thinking of this, my curiosity about the beauty in the painting surged once again. Chapter 10, The Handsome Man Bathing in the Clear Spring Pool. Early. That morning, as usual, I slept until I naturally woke up, realizing the sun was already high in the sky. Rubbing my eyes, I lazily stretched my head out and opened my eyes, only to suddenly freeze, staring wide-eyed at the fox head lying next to my pillow. Immortal Fox, do you know that scaring a fox can lead to its death? I looked at Immortal Fox's fox face and spoke helplessly. Immortal Fox shifted into human form, still lying on my pillow, smiling mischievously as she looked at me and asked, "Little sister, do you know what day it is today?" I shook my head, confused. Today is the grand birthday celebration of the Queen Mother. Heaven is hosting a grand banquet, and all the deities are invited, Immortal Fox said while scratching my head. How old is the Queen Mother? Probably as old as the Emperor Lord. Oh, by the way, do you know how old the Emperor Lord is? Immortal Fox asked curiously. I silently stared at her. Anyway, he must be tens of thousands of years old, just an old man. Why do you care? Immortal Fox shrugged indifferently. Resting my chin on my hand, I pondered for a moment. According to Immortal Fox, the Emperor Lord is just an old man tens of thousands of years old, right? But then again, if every old man looked as stunning as the Emperor Lord, having a few more wouldn't be so bad, at least it's pleasing to the eyes. Seeing me grinning foolishly, Immortal Fox knocked on my head and teased, laughing so lewdly early in the morning, are you thinking about men? I climbed out of bed, looking at Immortal Fox with a face full of grievance. Look at me, I'm already so old, way past my prime. Where would I find men to think about? Immortal Fox suddenly pounced on me, pinching me painfully a few times, her sparkling eyes filled with mock sadness. You, old? You're calling yourself old? I'm older than you. Little sister, you truly have no conscience, always finding ways to provoke your elder sister. After much effort, I managed to escape from Immortal Fox's clutches, letting out a yawn and asking, hey, big sister, what exactly did you come to find me for? Hearing this, Immortal Fox seemed to remember her purpose. She straightened her clothes, sat down on the bed, and said, of course, it's about the Queen Mother's birthday banquet. Every deity has to present a gift, so I came to see what gift my little sister has prepared. As I was contemplating what gift to prepare, Immortal Fox suddenly exclaimed as if she had just remembered something. Oh dear, I almost forgot. You haven't ascended to deity status yet, and moreover, you're a guest of the Emperor Lord. Naturally, you don't need to attend the Queen Mother's banquet. Look at me, so absent-minded earlier, well, little sister, you're off the hook for preparing a gift. Lyra finally understood why Immortal Fox was so cheerful today. It turned out she had been preparing to irritate her. Lyra glanced at her with disdain for her smug expression. Sigh, who would have thought that even the heavenly realm had its biases? However, this fox had a bad habit, if no one told her anything, fine, but once she caught wind of something, she absolutely had to join in the fun and see what the commotion was about. So, as soon as Immortal Fox left, Lyra grabbed a wooden box and hurried to the Eastern Blossom Hall of the Emperor Lord. Upon arriving at the Eastern Blossom Hall, she immediately caught hold of a little celestial attendant and asked insistently, where is the Emperor Lord? The little celestial attendant, familiar with Lyra's antics, honestly revealed the Emperor Lord's location but hesitated, the Emperor Lord is bathing at the clear spring pool. Lyra, already familiar with the way, quickly made her way there. The clear spring pool was indeed a marvelous place, its waters were crystal clear, warm in winter, cool in summer. Bathing there not only aided cultivation but also extended one's lifespan, leaving one feeling refreshed and invigorated. Unfortunately, this was the Emperor Lord's private sanctuary, and no one else was allowed to bathe there. Lyra had yearned for it, racking her brains for a way to gain this privilege. Surrounding the clear spring pool was a small garden, tranquil and undisturbed, with no one around and no celestial attendants guarding the entrance. Lyra boldly walked in. Emperor Lord, I have something to discuss with you, Lyra called out, clutching her large wooden box as she slowly approached the clear spring pool. She immediately spotted the Emperor Lord soaking in the water, leaning against the pool's edge with his eyes closed, seemingly at peace. Upon hearing her voice, the Emperor Lord opened his eyes. Seeing her still approaching, he sighed and said, Lyra Grace, I'm bathing. I know, go ahead and continue bathing, Lyra replied, finding a rock to sit on across from him. She stared at him intently without blinking. You can bathe while I talk. The Emperor Lord's expression seemed to twitch slightly as he said, Lyra. Grace, men and women should maintain proper boundaries. Whatever it is, wait until I'm done bathing. Please step outside. Lyra glanced at the Emperor Lord, her gaze suddenly drawn to his chest, partially exposed above the water. Her eyes fixated there, unable to look away. His fair, smooth skin looked so soft. As her gaze traveled upward, his face, faintly obscured by the steam, appeared even more ethereal, making one hesitant to offend. Then, her eyes drifted downward, only to be met by the frustratingly obstructive water of the spring. She couldn't help but feel irritated. This spring water was hiding so many rare and beautiful sights from the world. Lyra Grace, if you've seen enough, then leave. Just as I was engrossed in watching, the voice of the Emperor Lord rang out, tinged with a hint of helplessness and embarrassment. I looked up at the Emperor Lord, flashing an innocent smile, and solemnly replied, I haven't seen enough yet. You. The Emperor Lord seemed to realize that asking me to leave was futile. With a flick of his magic, he was instantly standing on the shore. I was about to admire the scenery that the stream had previously obscured when I noticed the Emperor Lord already fully dressed, standing right in front of me. Regretfully, I glanced at the Emperor Lord and said, Emperor Lord, I don't mind if you continue bathing. The Emperor Lord's lips curved slightly. Lyra Grace, you should get to the point. What is it you wish to discuss with me? Reminded by the Emperor Lord, I immediately recalled my purpose. I presented a wooden box to him and said, Emperor Lord, this is a small token of my regard for the Queen Mother. Snow Lyra knows she's merely a fox spirit and unworthy of attending the Queen Mother's birthday celebration, so I'd like to ask the Emperor Lord to deliver this gift to Her Majesty on my behalf, fulfilling a humble wish of Snow Lyra. After speaking, I looked at the Emperor Lord expectantly, only to find him gazing at me in return. As time passed, I began to feel uneasy, so I coughed twice and said, Emperor Lord. Who would have thought Lyra Grace would be so considerate? Rest assured, I will certainly present your gift to the Queen Mother. After a moment, the Emperor Lord averted his gaze and replied calmly. My smile stiffened. This wasn't the response I was hoping for. Shouldn't the Emperor Lord have said, since Lyra Grace is so thoughtful, why not accompany me to celebrate the Queen Mother's birthday? Then I thanked the Emperor Lord. I said dejectedly as I turned to leave. Lyra Grace, if you wish to attend the Queen Mother's birthday banquet, just say so directly. Why would I refuse you? Suddenly, the Emperor Lord's voice came from behind, stopping me in my tracks. Really? I turned around, suppressing my excitement and pretending to ask calmly. When have I ever lied to you? Thank you, Emperor Lord. I'll go prepare immediately. I exclaimed joyfully as I dashed out. Let's see if the immortal fox dares to look down on me this time. Wait a moment. The Emperor Lord suddenly called out to me. Ta turned around resentfully, is Emperor Lord changing his mind? The Emperor Lord was slightly taken aback before smiling, of course not. It's just that, Lyra Grace, this gift. I think you should choose something else. I was puzzled, why? Immortal Fox said the prism jewel is a rare treasure. The Queen Mother surely wouldn't dislike it. The Queen Mother wouldn't dislike the prism jewel, but if it's just a few strands of fox fur, I doubt she'd be pleased. With a light gesture from the Emperor Lord, the jewel inside the wooden box transformed into several strands of pure white fox fur. Scratching my head, I awkwardly glanced at the fox fur. Right, I only felt reluctant to part with the precious jewel, so I replaced it with my own fox fur as a fake. Who would have thought the Emperor Lord's sharp eyes could see through it without even opening the box? Exposed for my trickery, I was too embarrassed to stay. After hesitating for a moment, I turned and bolted. Miss, where are you going? Today is the Queen Mother's birthday banquet, and the Emperor Lord has instructed that you should be dressed beautifully. As soon as I returned to the Blue Blossom Courtyard, Graceful Willow hurried over, her graceful and delicate demeanor making me secretly wipe away my sweat. I'm going to see the Emperor Lord. I paused briefly before adding, oh right, Graceful Willow, I want to prepare a gift for the Queen Mother. What do you think would be a good choice? Graceful Willow blinked, slightly confused, and asked hesitantly, Miss, the Emperor Lord has already prepared a gift. Didn't he tell you? I was stunned and hesitated before asking, "You mean the Emperor Lord originally planned to take me to the Queen Mother's birthday banquet?" "Of course. Miss, you are the Emperor Lord's honored guest. For such an important event, how could he let you miss it?" Graceful Willow spoke as though it was obvious, while I was internally debating whether I should bite my tongue and end it all. All my efforts, rushing with the precious wooden box to the Eastern Blossom Hall, putting so much thought into getting the Emperor Lord's approval, turned out to be completely unnecessary. I let out a long sigh. The Emperor Lord truly lies without batting an eye, without a change in expression, without a quickened heartbeat, and not a single twitch of his eyelid. Indeed, immortals with profound cultivation even excel at lying with unparalleled grace. After venting my frustrations, I let Graceful Willow escort me back to the Moonfall Garden. She pressed me into a seat in front of the dressing table and meticulously styled my hair and applied makeup in the manner of a heavenly court fairy. Graceful Willow's skills were so exquisite that I nearly didn't recognize myself. I stared, dumbfounded, at the white peony ornament adorning my hair. It made me look just like a blossom fairy. "Graceful Willow, why did you pin this on me? Is that white peony flower really for me?" I weakly asked. "Little Immortal heard the Emperor Lord mention that in your past life, you were the peony fairy in the heavenly realm. Just as it happens, Evergreen Pine somehow found a peony flower, and Little Immortal thought, aside from you, no one else could possibly be worthy of this flower," Graceful Willow gently said. I fell silent. That Evergreen Pine fellow was definitely messing with me. If it were a real peony, I wouldn't mind. But this was a fake flower. I'd bet my fox fur on it, this flower was undoubtedly conjured by Evergreen Pine himself, because the pine thorns even pricked my scalp. "Evergreen Pine, just you wait, I'll report you to the Emperor Lord." Chapter 11, The Queen Mother's Birthday Banquet. This afternoon, Emperor Lord arrived punctually at the Blue Blossom Courtyard to take me riding on clouds to Heaven's Peak, the sacred mountain of the Queen Mother. Although Mount Chi-Yun lies just at the foot of Heaven's Peak, I had never seen its form, let alone set foot on it. Now, finally able to witness it with my own eyes, my heart brimmed with excitement. Of course, the most satisfying part was seeing the group of immortals, both great and small, trailing behind Emperor Lord, with Immortal Fox skulking at the very end of the line. My eyes are sharp, I caught a glimpse of Immortal Fox's aggrieved expression in an instant, and I couldn't help but smile. How delightful it is to have someone powerful backing me. As soon as we entered Heaven's Peak, my vision blurred amidst the thick fog that perpetually shrouds the mountain, rendering the scenery dreamlike and indistinct. Without Emperor Lord leading the way, I would surely have lost my way. I couldn't tell how many places we passed, only that celestial attendants and maidens guided us at every turn. Finally, I caught sight of a grand palace soaring into the clouds. Emperor Lord led me inside with ease. I noticed that a banquet had already been arranged within the hall, awaiting the arrival of the immortals. "Emperor Lord, this palace has awaited your presence for quite some time." As I was glancing around in curiosity, a gentle voice echoed. I looked up to see a middle-aged woman, elegantly dressed, descending gracefully from the main hall. Her demeanor was composed and dignified, her smile both tender and commanding. Startled, I thought to myself, could this be the legendary Queen Mother? May the Queen Mother enjoy boundless longevity. Emperor Lord remained calm, offering only a slight nod before instructing Evergreen Pine and Graceful Willow to present the gifts. "Emperor Lord, you are too kind." The Queen Mother smiled, her regal presence exuding the authority of a celestial matriarch. I secretly observed the Queen Mother. Immortal Fox had once mentioned that she and Emperor Lord were of similar age, yet they appeared so different. Although the Queen Mother showed no signs of aging, she seemed about the same age as my own mother, while Emperor Lord looked more like her son. Could it be that female immortals age faster than their male counterparts? "Emperor Lord, isn't this young lady?" "Indeed, she is the reincarnation of Peony Fairy." While I was still pondering over this matter, the Queen Mother and Emperor Lord began discussing me. I quickly regained my composure and bowed slightly, saying, "Snow Lyra greets the Queen Mother, wishing your Majesty eternal longevity." "Snow Lyra?" the Queen Mother repeated softly, suddenly letting out a gentle sigh, her tone becoming even more tender. "I can't believe 2,000 years have passed so quickly. Peony, you've endured so much." I was stunned, realizing that the Queen Mother was speaking to me. Overwhelmed and flustered, I stammered, "Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty." In this life, Peony was reincarnated as a fox by a twist of fate. If the Emperor Lord has already found Peony's reincarnation, why only inform me now? I could have helped her return to her rightful place sooner. After saying this, the Queen Mother turned her gaze toward the Emperor Lord. "The Queen Mother may not know," the Emperor Lord began, "though Lyra Grace is a fox spirit and has cultivated for 2,000 years, her progress has been slow. Her temperament is still unsteady, and she seems uninterested in becoming an immortal. It took much persuasion on my part to bring her to the heavenly court, which is why I only now introduce her to you." The Emperor Lord rarely spoke so much, but his voice was so mesmerizing that I automatically ignored his remark about my slow cultivation. Oh. Peony always had great affinity with immortality and high comprehension. How could she be? The Queen Mother trailed off, glancing at me as if to say, how could she be so foolish in this life? I silently thanked her for not voicing that thought aloud and sparing me the blow. "The Queen Mother, I have a request," the Emperor Lord suddenly said, casting a glance at me. "Speak freely, Emperor Lord. I hope to keep Lyra Grace by my side." The moment he said this, not only was the Queen Mother taken aback, but I was also utterly confused. Does my stay or departure need the Queen Mother's approval? If it weren't for the Emperor Lord's overwhelmingly captivating appearance and voice, I wouldn't have even bothered coming to this heavenly court. The Queen Mother remained silent for a long time, a faint trace of sorrow flashing in her eyes before she slowly asked, "Is this fate already predetermined? Even the Emperor Lord cannot escape it." Hearing this, the Emperor Lord smiled faintly, a radiant smile like the glow of the setting sun, filling the room with warmth and stirring emotions in everyone's hearts. "The Queen Mother, you and I were born from the chaos of creation. Now, tens of thousands of millennia have passed in the blink of an eye, quietly and without permanence. The rise and fall of worlds are but fleeting moments. Eastern Blossom never imagined such a twist of fate would occur, thinking I would forever protect all beings and live peacefully through endless eons. However, the heavens have shown mercy to Eastern Blossom, unwilling to let me remain lonely for eternity, and thus granted me this change. In the past, Eastern Blossom did not cherish what was given, but as time passed, those brief 2,000 years became the longest in my life. Now that I have the chance to make amends, Eastern Blossom will never let go again." As the Emperor Lord finished speaking, the great hall fell into silence. The Queen Mother seemed lost in thought, her eyes filled with astonishment. As for me, I was simply terrified by the tens of thousands of millennia mentioned by the Emperor Lord. Immortal Fox had assumed they were only a few tens of thousands of years old, but to think they had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Such a span of time, it's not just ancient, it's downright prehistoric. If I lived that long, I might have turned into an old hag of a fox demon. How on earth does the Emperor Lord maintain such a youthful and alluring appearance? I touched the skin on my face, admitting it was barely passable as smooth, then glanced at the Emperor Lord's flawless, jade-like complexion. Unable to help myself, I swallowed hard. It's so unfair, such a blow to a fox spirit's pride. If the Emperor Lord has made up his mind, I have no choice but to relent. Finally, the Queen Mother regained her usual composure, offering a gracious smile. "I trust the Emperor Lord will ensure the past will not repeat itself. Take good care of her." "Thank you, the Queen Mother." The dialogue between Emperor Lord and the Queen Mother had just ended when the other celestial beings began to arrive one by one. Emperor Lord led me to a seat on the side. I tilted my head, staring intently at his face, unable to stop myself from marveling inwardly. Age truly seemed to be of no concern to Emperor Lord. Lyra Grace, what are you staring at? Emperor Lord suddenly turned to me, his clear eyes gazing directly into mine. I quickly looked away. This is blatant seduction. Brazen seduction. I could only hypnotize myself. Snow Lyra, you are a grown fox spirit now. Don't act childish. Stay composed. Lyra Grace, is something wrong? Emperor Lord asked curiously. No, it's nothing. I avoided his gaze, stuttering, unable to form a coherent sentence, while inwardly lamenting, beauty is truly a curse. To mask my awkwardness, I picked up the wine cup on the table and gulped down several sips. Who would have thought that just as I was drinking, Emperor Lord would ask, Lyra Grace, what did you mean by, beauty is a curse? Pfft. I spat out the wine. Closing my eyes, I silently cursed, Emperor Lord, must you always embarrass me to feel satisfied? Embarrass you? How so? Emperor Lord persisted in questioning. I turned sharply to glare at him. Emperor Lord, you must not eavesdrop on my thoughts. Emperor Lord suddenly smiled and nodded obediently. All right, if Lyra Grace says not to listen, then I won't listen. I covered my eyes. That smile of his, it's simply too enchanting. Finally, the birthday banquet began. Celestial beings arrived one after another to offer their blessings to the Queen Mother and then proceeded to greet Emperor Lord. He returned to his usual stern demeanor, nodding curtly to everyone. For the first time, I realized how unparalleled Emperor Lord's status was in the celestial realm. Like a monarch of the mortal world, he stood high above the 9 heavens, revered by all living beings, admired but untouchable. Yet, when he turned and smiled at me, he seemed so close enough that I felt I could reach out and touch him. Immortal Fox sat at the far end of the grand hall, occasionally casting resentful glances my way. I felt utterly innocent. This morning, she had even risen early just to mock me. So, I pretended not to notice Immortal Fox's resentful gaze and began observing the celestial maidens in the hall. I must admit, the Queen Mother's palace was filled with beauties, each one breathtakingly graceful, devoid of mortal vulgarity or the seductive charm of demons. They were as pure as the white peonies adorning my hair, true celestial maidens. Moreover, these maidens occasionally came to each table to pour wine, but I noticed something peculiar. Very few of them approached our table. Though our cups remained full, I couldn't shake the feeling that their gazes toward Emperor Lord were rather strange. Especially one maiden in a red dress, her eyes weren't filled with admiration, but resentment. This piqued my curiosity. On heaven and earth, few would dare show such an attitude toward Emperor Lord. Not to mention his supreme status among all celestials, just one look at his unparalleled beauty would leave any woman, much like myself, utterly captivated. Suddenly, a thought struck me. Could it be that Emperor Lord had wronged Scarlet Fairy? I glanced at the red-dressed maiden, then back at Emperor Lord, who remained aloof. My speculation seemed reasonable. And then, I recalled the legendary portrait of a beauty. As my thoughts wandered, I continued drinking. According to Emperor Lord, this was the precious elixir of grace from Celestial Lake. When else would I have the chance to indulge? If only I had known that drinking this wine would lead me to commit an earth-shattering act that would incite the wrath of all celestials, I would never have taken a sip. After all, becoming the enemy of the entire ethereal realm is far from glorious. It's a tragedy. A tragedy even more pitiful than Immortal Fox's plight. At least she's merely ignored, while I was spat upon by others. Truly, a whole different realm of despair. Chapter 12, The Shy Fox Maiden. I woke up after 3 days. Opening my eyes, I saw evergreen pine and graceful willow still standing motionless before me. The moment graceful willow noticed I was awake, she smiled but didn't say anything. Instead, she hurriedly ran outside, shouting, "She's awake. I'll go report to the Emperor Lord." As for evergreen pine, he stared at me unblinkingly, his gaze filled with what seemed like resentment. His face alternated between green, red, and pale white, as if he wanted to peel the skin off this fox of mine. Startled, I couldn't figure out what I had done to offend this little deity so much. "Good morning, evergreen pine." I forced myself to greet him. "Humph." Evergreen pine snorted coldly, turned his face away, and stormed out, his sleeves billowing. His aggrieved expression left me bewildered, thinking, I didn't steal his pine cones this time, did I? I tapped my still dazed head and groggily climbed out of bed. "Sister, you're awake." At that moment, Immortal Fox gracefully stepped into my room. "What are you saying, sister?" I noticed her excitement and couldn't help but feel puzzled. "Hee, sister, to be honest, you're truly remarkable, bringing glory to our fox clan. On behalf of all our sisters in the clan, I commend you." Immortal Fox laughed as she spoke. I struggled to open my eyes and asked, "What exactly have I done to earn your admiration, sister?" Immortal Fox clicked her tongue twice, looking me up and down with a teasing expression. "Sister, pretending to have amnesia isn't a good idea. The entire heavenly realm now knows you dared to act out with the Emperor Lord right in front of the Queen Mother and all the immortals. Tell me, how do you plan to live in the heavenly realm after this?" "What?" My eyes widened as I bolted upright from the bed. This was like a thunderbolt out of the blue. It couldn't possibly be true. Seeing my shock, Immortal Fox hesitated for a moment before covering her mouth and giggling. To me, that laugh was clearly one of schadenfreude. "Sister, were you so drunk that you forgot even this? Let me help you remember." With that, Immortal Fox waved her hand, and a beam of white light flashed. Her slender finger lightly touched my forehead, and I saw a scene that made me want to bury myself in shame. At the grand banquet celebrating the Queen Mother's birthday, I had boldly emptied an entire jug of elixir of grace. Then, shamelessly, I sidled up to the Emperor Lord. Caught off guard, he ended up being held tightly in my embrace. Not stopping there, I audaciously planted a kiss on his cheek. The immortals, who had been chatting and laughing, fell silent, frozen as they watched me misbehave with the Emperor Lord. But I seemed fearless. Seeing the Emperor Lord's eternally stoic expression crumble because of my kiss, with his ears even turning a rare shade of red, I found him utterly adorable. Without a second thought, I kissed him again on the cheek. After the second kiss, I even licked my lips and said, "Emperor Lord, you're so beautiful, and you taste amazing too." The Emperor Lord was petrified. The immortals remained silent. As for me, upon witnessing this scene, tears finally streamed down my face. Is this really me? Could this really be something I did? This fox, ever since the first time I met White Little Mountain and recklessly licked him without knowing the immensity of heaven and earth, was beaten to a pulp and enslaved for over 1,000 years. Since then, how could I dare do anything so reckless and harmful to others and myself? Yet today I actually dared commit such an outrageous act against the esteemed Emperor Lord. This. Do I even have a path to survival anymore? The immortals of Ethereal, just one spit from each of them would be enough to drown me. Little sister, I never expected you to harbor feelings for the Emperor Lord for so long. Truly, as a woman of our Fox clan, your taste and courage are extraordinary. Immortal Fox chuckled slyly, her eyes gleaming with mischief. I had no face left to show anyone, so I transformed into a fox, tucked my tail, and burrowed into the blankets. Oh, White Little Mountain, it seems I won't even find you before perishing here in the heavenly realm. Why is my fate so miserable? I don't know how long I hid under the blanket when suddenly someone lifted it. Thinking it was immortal fox, I stayed perfectly still. What's wrong with Lyra Grace? A voice, smooth as heavenly music and tinged with a faint hint of amusement, suddenly rang out. Startled, I turned around to see the Emperor Lord himself smiling as he stood before me. My face flushed red, thankfully hidden beneath my fox fur. I hung my head low, still despondent. Drinking wasn't an issue, but drunkenly acting out was utterly shameful, especially when the target of my acting out was none other than the Emperor Lord, revered across the three realms. I'm doomed. Seeing my dejection, the Emperor Lord sighed softly and picked me up. His slender fingers gently stroked my fox fur as he slowly said, as I recall, it wasn't Lyra Grace who was taken advantage of. What does Lyra Grace have to be embarrassed about? I froze. It's not shyness I'm feeling, it's grief for the bleak days ahead of me. Seeing that I remained motionless, silent, and practically half dead, the Emperor Lord used his magic to transform me back into human form in an instant. His bright eyes locked onto mine, and he asked intently, Lyra Grace, what is it that you truly want? I blinked my tearful eyes and, after a long pause, managed to squeeze out a single sentence, Emperor Lord, may I see the painting of the beauty in your cabinet? The Emperor Lord froze, a suspicious blush briefly crossing his face. He turned away, coughed lightly twice, and then asked, why is Lyra Grace asking about this? So the Emperor Lord does have a secret. I thought to myself. After all, I merely acted out a little while drunk, didn't I? Once I expose his secret, let's see who dares pay attention to me anymore. Emperor Lord, are you not going to let me see it? I continued to blink innocently, trying to appear as pitiful as possible. Emperor Lord returned, the awkwardness from earlier completely gone, replaced by a calmness as serene as water. He glanced at me and asked, do you really want to see it? I nodded eagerly. How could Emperor Lord possibly know that I had been coveting that beauty painting for so long? Not wanting to see it would be absurd. Emperor Lord said no more, simply waved his sleeve, and a delicate white porcelain vase, as exquisite as jade, appeared in his hand. Its shape was no different from the vases I had seen in his cabinet before. The painting is inside. You can take it out and look at it, Emperor Lord said, handing the porcelain vase to me. Unable to hold back my grin, I pulled out a scroll from within, and as I unrolled it, I brazenly asked, Hee, Emperor Lord, this must be your confidant, right? Hi, do you two have some secret romance? Emperor Lord was momentarily stunned, but then the corners of his lips curled into a faint smile. If you want to think that, so be it. Hearing Emperor Lord admit it himself, I became even more smug. Slowly unrolling the painting, I watched as the beauty's face inside gradually appeared. However, when I finally saw that face, my smile froze instantly. My eyes locked onto the painting, and I turned to stone on the spot. The beauty in the painting was none other than me, the fox. What's wrong? Lyra Grace, why aren't you saying anything now? Emperor Lord feigned innocence as he asked, seeing my dumbfounded expression. Emperor Lord, I was just joking earlier. Please don't take it to heart. After a long pause, I weakly replied. Oh. Which part was a joke? The confidant or the secret romance? Emperor Lord's lips maintained their faint smile, but I could clearly see the amusement in his eyes. Both were jokes. My face flushed crimson as I stammered. Rest well, Lyra Grace. I'll take my leave now. Emperor Lord stopped teasing me, stood up, and prepared to leave. Emperor Lord, was that painting swapped out? I suddenly spoke up. If the person in the painting was me, there's no way Immortal Fox wouldn't have recognized it. Emperor Lord's steps paused. He turned back to look at me, his lips curving slightly as he nonchalantly replied, Lyra Grace is truly clever. Watching Emperor Lord leisurely walk out, I was so furious that I pounded my chest and stomped my feet. How could I be so stupid? How could I let Emperor Lord fool me? I'm the smartest fox there is, but this is utterly humiliating if word gets out. Miss, the imperial meal is ready. Please come and eat. Graceful Willow's voice suddenly rang out beside the bed. I looked up to see Graceful Willow's expression as calm as ever, while Evergreen Pine stood next to her, his face still as dark as if I owed him tens of thousands of silver taels. Not eating, not eating. I pounded the bed, then transformed into my fox form and darted out into the courtyard to bask in the sun. Chapter 13, Jade Fairy emerges for the 8th time. Given the severity of the situation this time, I decided to stay hidden in the Blue Blossom courtyard, not daring to step outside. Immortal Fox temporarily acted as my spy, roaming everywhere to gather information. According to the latest news, the entire ethereal realm was still shrouded in a gloomy atmosphere, and the resentment of those devoted to the Emperor Lord remained strong, occasionally lingering outside the Blue Blossom courtyard. In short, I was far from safe at the moment. Today, Immortal Fox and I transformed into our fox forms, basking in the sun in the garden of the Blue Blossom courtyard. I plucked a blade of foxtail grass, held it in my mouth, and sighed in boredom. Big sister, when do you think this will all end? I tilted my head to look at Immortal Fox and asked. Immortal Fox glanced at me without responding, merely brushing her claws against the lush green grass beneath her. Then, out of nowhere, she produced a chicken drumstick and started munching on it with delight. I looked at her skeptically. Big sister, haven't you already ascended to immortality? Aren't immortals supposed to be indifferent to earthly delicacies? Immortal Fox shot me a sidelong glance and suddenly smirked mischievously. You wouldn't understand. This drumstick isn't just any ordinary drumstick, it's an authentic Heavenly Realm chicken drumstick. The corner of my mouth twitched as I spat out the foxtail grass. Did you rob the kitchen god again? Seeing Immortal Fox nod proudly, I couldn't help but feel pity for the kitchen god. Truly, he was a pitiful deity. Just to avoid being harassed by Immortal Fox, this talkative troublemaker, he had no choice but to supply her with specialty heavenly chicken drumsticks whenever she demanded. The celestial chickens in the heavenly realms farms must be nearing extinction by now. While Immortal Fox savored her meal with relish, I could only watch with envy. After all, I was still a fox, yet I had foolishly promised White Little Mountain that I wouldn't touch a single piece of chicken for the rest of my life. That promise was truly too cruel for me. I raised my head to look at the blazing golden sun, tears brimming in my eyes. Suddenly, I sensed the surrounding temperature drop sharply. Despite basking in the warm sunlight moments ago, I could no longer feel any warmth. My fox fur stood on end from the chill. I turned to look at Immortal Fox, but before I could ask, I saw the chicken drumstick in her hand drop to the ground with a thud. Her expression changed dramatically, and she only had time to exclaim, "Take care, little sister. Big sister is leaving first," before she vanished in an instant. I was astonished by the speed of Immortal Fox. While I was still bewildered, a gigantic green serpent appeared before me. Its entire body radiated a shimmering emerald glow, its head raised high, tail arched upward, slowly slithering in my direction. I widened my eyes, finally understanding what Immortal Fox meant by "take care." Just as I was about to chase after her, I noticed a transparent layer of ice forming in front of me. My fox paws turned icy cold. I glanced around and had no choice but to admit, I had been frozen solid. Oh no, I don't want to become an ice statue. Immortal Fox, you're so unkind. You treacherous fox. Tears welled up in my eyes as I screamed internally. It seemed like the green serpent heard my silent cries. Its head suddenly turned towards me, its emerald eyes flashing with a sinister light, staring directly at me. Could this be the legendary serpent's glare? I lamented inwardly. The green serpent changed direction, beginning to slither toward me, its tongue flicking out slowly as it hissed. I wanted to cry, but no tears would fall. I'm a fox, do snakes even eat foxes? Miss. At that moment, I heard the tender voice of graceful Willow. Tears immediately streamed down my face in joy. I was saved. Graceful Willow hurriedly approached me and gently cast a spell. The ice encasing me shattered instantly. I shook off the water from my body, transformed back into human form, and without a word, threw myself into Graceful Willow's arms, sobbing, "Graceful Willow, quickly subdue that green serpent, it wants to eat me." "Don't be afraid, miss." Graceful Willow comforted me softly, patting my back. She then gently pushed me aside, turned, and respectfully bowed. "This humble one greets Jade Fairy." I froze in place, following Graceful Willow's gaze. The green serpent from earlier had disappeared. Standing before me now was a stunningly beautiful woman dressed in jade green robes. However, her expression was cold and devoid of emotion. Hearing Graceful Willow's words, Jade Fairy remained unresponsive. She merely cast a fleeting glance at me before turning to walk toward Dawnlight Garden. "Graceful Willow, miss, that is Jade Fairy of Dawnlight Garden. Today, she happens to have come out of seclusion. It was my negligence that caused you such fright. Your cultivation is still low, so if there's nothing urgent, it's best to keep your distance from Jade Fairy," Graceful Willow advised. Thus, after Immortal Fox, I encountered yet another extraordinary deity of Blue Blossom Courtyard. Rumor has it that this Jade Fairy achieved enlightenment 200 years ago, but 199 of those years were spent in seclusion. Let me tell you the whole story. Before attaining immortality, Jade Fairy was an exceptionally diligent green serpent. It took her 3,000 years to ascend to the immortal realm. Even after becoming an immortal, she retained her thirst for knowledge and immediately started mastering the Snake Clan's ultimate technique, the Frost Ice Divine Art. Unfortunately, despite her immortal status, Jade Fairy found it challenging to fully control this supreme technique. In her 2 centuries as an immortal, Jade Fairy alternated between entering and emerging from seclusion, only to return to seclusion once again. The first time she came out of seclusion, she froze the entire Blue Blossom Courtyard and got herself trapped in Dawnlight Garden. Fortunately, the Emperor Lord appeared in time to prevent the Blue Blossom Courtyard from becoming the first ice architecture in the heavenly realm. After this incident, Jade Fairy was heavily shaken. Without saying a word, she returned to continue her illustrious career of cultivation in seclusion. The second time she emerged, Jade Fairy stepped out of Dawnlight Garden, turned around, and saw the entire garden covered in a thick layer of ice. This time, she dared not trouble the Emperor Lord. After 3 arduous days and nights of channeling energy, she finally melted the ice in Dawnlight Garden. Thus, as soon as she stepped out of Dawnlight Garden, she turned back to her cave dwelling to continue diligently cultivating. The third time she emerged, Jade Fairy trembled as she stepped out of Dawnlight Garden. Seeing the garden still intact, she was immensely relieved and hurried outside to share her breakthrough with fellow immortals. At that moment, it happened to be Immortal Fox's Ascension celebration. Blue Blossom Courtyard was bustling with activity as immortals gathered to offer their congratulations. Jade Fairy, too, joined the festivities. However, just as she entered the gates of Starlight Garden and was about to smile and greet everyone, she froze in place. The immortals were all encased in ice, staring at her with wide-open eyes. And so, Jade Fairy dejectedly returned to Dawnlight Garden to resume her cultivation. This continued. By the 4th and 5th time she emerged, Jade Fairy still couldn't fully control the frost energy emanating from her body. Considering that Blue Blossom Courtyard only had Immortal Fox aside from herself, every time she came out of seclusion, Jade Fairy would seek out Immortal Fox to share her cultivation progress. Yet, each time, Immortal Fox ended up as an ice statue. After numerous such incidents, Immortal Fox developed a conditioned reflex. The moment she sensed a drop in temperature, she would flee the danger zone at lightning speed. This time, she even abandoned her beloved drumstick and disappeared without a trace. According to Graceful Willow, this marked the 8th time Jade Fairy had come out of seclusion, and it seemed she still hadn't succeeded. It was likely she would return to her cultivation soon. Hearing this from graceful Willow, I couldn't help but sympathize. Looking at my 9 painstakingly cultivated tails, I suddenly felt a bit more balanced. So, there really are cultivation prodigies in this world on par with me. 2 days later, Immortal Fox cheerfully burst into my room and dragged me out from under my blanket. Evergreen Pine, see the guest out. I squinted my eyes and glared angrily at Immortal Fox. This wretched creature always vanishes faster than a rabbit at the first sign of danger. My dear little sister, don't be mad. Big sister has good news for you. Immortal Fox smiled alluringly, but I turned my face away in disdain. Evergreen Pine. Evergreen Pine. Evergreen Pine. I continued shouting at the top of my lungs. Despite my shouting until my voice was hoarse, Evergreen Pine still didn't show up. I bit my lip, certain he was still upset about me harassing Emperor Lord. What is it? Speak up, I asked drowsily, unable to tolerate Immortal Fox's whining any longer. Noticing my softened tone, Immortal Fox immediately launched into a long-winded explanation. Half asleep, I managed to catch the gist of it. According to her, after 2 days of silent observation, Jade Fairy's cold ice divine technique had improved significantly, allowing her to suppress her aura to some extent. Although still far from mastery, as long as one had a certain level of cultivation, they wouldn't be frozen by her anymore. Then why was I frozen? I protested indignantly. After all, I've been cultivating as a fox spirit for 2,000 years. Immortal Fox cast me a sidelong glance and said, I'm an immortal, and even I've been frozen by her countless times before. You're just a mere demon with only 2,000 years of cultivation. Don't worry, you'll have plenty more chances to be frozen in the future. Annoyed, I glared at Immortal Fox. Her words were truly infuriating. Immortal Fox wasn't one to back down and glared right back at me. After a while, her eyes began to sting, and she blinked, patting my shoulder with a tone of mock sympathy. Don't worry, little sister. You'll get used to it eventually. Besides, with me here, I won't let you stay frozen for too long. I huffed, just as Evergreen Pine slowly walked into the room. What are your orders, my lady? Evergreen Pine asked, his gaze still carrying a deep sense of resentment. I pouted. Evergreen Pine, you still haven't forgiven me, have you? Evergreen Pine froze, his handsome face revealing a trace of awkwardness as he lowered his head. Why would you say that, my lady? Ha, look at you. Every time you put on that stepmother face around me, anyone can tell you're still holding a grudge. This time, Evergreen Pine's face flushed red, and he stammered, my lady, I waved him off, feigning a helpless sigh. All right, don't say anything. I know you're still hung up on me disrespecting Emperor Lord. So, to balance things out for you, I've decided to gift Immortal Fox to you so you can harass her in return. The moment I finished speaking, Evergreen Pine's expression changed dramatically, shifting from pale to green. He glared at me before storming off with a flick of his sleeve. I glanced at Immortal Fox beside me, closing my eyes as I braced for her impending tirade. To my surprise, Immortal Fox sat down on my bed, her expression satisfied as she remarked, my soulmate, you truly are my dear little sister. The corner of my mouth twitched. So, Immortal Fox had been eyeing Evergreen Pine, the little celestial attendant, all along. Chapter 14, Peach Fairy's Wild Frenzy. Since Jade Fairy came out of seclusion, I no longer visit the flower garden of Blue Blossom Courtyard because Graceful Willow mentioned that Jade Fairy enjoys wandering through the grass. If I'm not careful, I might end up frozen again. Today, Immortal Fox brought some news, saying that the Queen Mother sent Peach Fairy from the Floral Palace to deliver peaches to the Emperor Lord. Hearing this, I found it strange. Back when I was at Azure Hill and Cloud Spire Mountain, I often overheard demons gossiping about the Fruit of Eternity festival in the celestial realm. They said it was a grand event, truly filled with heavenly delicacies. So why is it so stingy now? Not even a shadow of the banquet can be seen. Immortal Fox noticed my confusion and explained, the fruit of eternity ripens only once every 3,000 years. I've looked into it. Previously, the Queen Mother would host a grand Fruit of Eternity festival every 3,000 years. But this time, it seems like there's a shortage of the fruit. Who knows if it's because the lands of the celestial realm have become barren. They almost had a poor harvest. That's why now the Queen Mother only gives a few fruits to esteemed immortals like Emperor Lord. Then, can we eat them? I asked. That was my main concern. If there's no chicken to eat, some fruit would do, right? Immortal Fox smacked my forehead and said, dream on. Even I don't get to eat them. What makes you think a backdoor demon like you would have a share? I pouted. I didn't go through the back door. Immortal Fox raised an eyebrow and pinched my waist painfully, saying, still denying it. Don't you remember how you got to the celestial realm in the first place? Emperor Lord insisted on bringing me along. I continued to pout. White Little Mountain taught me that using backdoor methods is shameful, but being forced into it is a different matter. Humph. Immortal Fox shot me a sideways glance before strutting out of the room. I watched Immortal Fox's retreating figure, biting my finger as I sank into thought. If I want to eat celestial peaches, does that mean I'll have to go through the back door too? Thinking so, I decisively left the Blue Blossom Courtyard and headed straight to the Eastern Blossom Hall of Lord Emperor. As I was nearing the Eastern Blossom Hall, I saw a stunning fairy in a red dress stepping out from within. Her figure was graceful, her beauty rivaling that of peach blossoms, yet her expression was rather cold. I paused, suddenly recalling that she was the red-dressed fairy who seemed to dislike Lord Emperor during the Queen Mother's birthday banquet. Back then, I even suspected she might be the beauty depicted in the painting. Now seeing her coming out of the Eastern Blossom Hall, it was indeed suspicious. Before I could gather my thoughts, the red-dressed fairy was already standing right in front of me, staring intently without blinking. Finally, her gaze lingered on my forehead, her expression complex and unreadable, caught between astonishment, joy, sorrow, and pity. I touched my forehead. Apart from the peony mark that couldn't possibly be erased, what else could be wrong? Why did this fairy in front of me seem so agitated? Peony sister, don't you remember me? Suddenly, the red-dressed fairy spoke, her peach blossom eyes brimming with tears in an instant. Her appearance was truly captivating, enough to stir anyone's heart. I rolled my eyes, coughed twice awkwardly, and said hesitantly, Fairy, you must have mistaken me for someone else. Peony sister, how could you not recognize me? Her Majesty has already said it, you are Peony sister, and all the sisters are waiting for you to return to the Floral Palace. The red-dressed fairy, overwhelmed with emotion, grabbed my hand, her beautiful face gradually flushed with an enchanting hue. I glanced at her hand, such strength. Internally, I sighed in amazement and tried to pull my hand away, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't succeed. So, I sighed deeply and gave a smile that I thought looked helpless. It's not that I don't want to return, but I know. Is it because of Lord Emperor? The red-dressed fairy abruptly interrupted me, her face filled with indignation as she exclaimed, Peony sister, why are you so foolish? Why haven't you forgotten Lord Emperor yet? He has abandoned you for 3,000 years, yet you're still so stubborn. Listen to me, Lord Emperor is cold and heartless, he will never fall for you. Even if you wait another 30,000 years, it won't change anything. I looked up at the sky, utterly baffled by the situation. At that moment, I saw Lord Emperor stepping out of the Eastern Blossom Hall. I took a deep breath, finally managing to break free from Scarlet Fairy's grip, and darted behind Lord Emperor. Pointing at Scarlet Fairy, I exclaimed, Lord Emperor, this fairy has gone mad. Scarlet Fairy's expression changed the moment she saw Lord Emperor. She quickly bowed and said softly, Lord Emperor, this humble one has a request to make. Lord Emperor glanced at her, his clear eyes devoid of any emotion, and replied indifferently, I already know what you want to say. Regarding Peony Fairy, Her Majesty and I have already made our decision. Please return. Lord Emperor, Scarlet Fairy wanted to say more, but Lord Emperor had already taken my hand and turned to walk back into the Eastern Blossom Hall. I looked at Lord Emperor's long, slender, jade-like hand holding mine, then sneaked a glance back at Scarlet Fairy. Her peach blossom eyes seemed to blaze with fury, but there was nothing she could do. With Lord Emperor's authority, all she could do was glare. I discreetly tried to pull my hand away, but it was no use. Lord Emperor's grip was even firmer than Scarlet Fairy's. I glanced at Scarlet Fairy's pale face and thought to myself, an angry fairy is truly terrifying, especially when they're furious with no outlet to vent. Lost in thought, I suddenly realized Lord Emperor had released my hand. He looked at me, his eyes and lips carrying a faint smile, and asked, Lyra Grace, have you come here for the fruit of eternity? My face burned with embarrassment. Was my intention that obvious? I hadn't yet thought of a proper response when a little celestial servant carried over a plate of fruit of eternity. Looking at the juicy fruit of eternity, I tried to avert my gaze. Staring too long might make my mouth water. This is the fruit of eternity that Peach Fairy just sent me. If Lyra Grace wants to eat, take them all. The Emperor Lord smiled, noticing my craving expression. All of them? I widened my eyes in surprise. Honestly, I thought just getting to eat one would already be satisfying. Looking at the plate, there were at least 8 or 9 fruits. Eating that much, wouldn't it cause a stomachache? The fruit of eternity gifted by the Queen Mother only extends lifespan and aids in attaining immortality, it won't cause a stomachache. Don't worry, Lyra Grace, the Emperor Lord said casually, as if reading my thoughts. I covered my face, protesting, Emperor Lord, you promised you wouldn't eavesdrop on my thoughts. The Emperor Lord paused, then smiled, all right, if Lyra Grace says not to, I won't listen anymore. Emperor Lord, what about you? Aren't you going to eat? I still felt embarrassed taking so many fruits of eternity. After all, accepting someone's kindness binds you to them, doesn't it? I've been in the celestial realm for hundreds of thousands of years. The number of fruits of eternity I've eaten probably surpasses the amount of rice Lyra Grace has consumed. Your cultivation is still low, eating all of these fruits of eternity will help you gain 2,000 years of spiritual practice. I was stunned. Just a few fruits of eternity, and they were more effective than 2,000 years of arduous cultivation. Truly, this was the fastest shortcut to immortality. So, I grabbed the fruits of eternity and happily munched on one as I returned to the Blue Blossom Courtyard. Miss Graceful Willow was visibly startled seeing the fruit of eternity in my hand. Here, Graceful Willow, this one's for you. I casually handed a fruit to Graceful Willow. Evergreen Pine, this one's yours. Just as Evergreen Pine came out of the house, I tossed him a fruit as well. Evergreen Pine's expression was just as shocked as Graceful Willow's. Holding the fruit of eternity, he froze, too stunned to speak. Miss, this. Graceful Willow stammered, looking at me in confusion. Thinking one fruit might be too little, I took another and handed it to Graceful Willow, sincerely asking, Graceful Willow, is this enough? Enough, enough. Thank you, Mississippi. The fruit of eternity is very precious, you should keep it for yourself, she said, attempting to return the fruit to me. I'm afraid of overeating and feeling bloated. You too help me finish them. I said with a smile, then handed Evergreen Pine another fruit to be fair. Both of them looked at me with expressions of both joy and worry. I glanced up at the sky. The fruit of eternity from the heavenly realm truly is a rare treasure. Look at these 2 junior immortals, they're so moved they're about to cry. Sister, you've returned, finally. As soon as I entered the room, I heard Immortal Fox's voice. I looked up and saw her staring intently at the fruit of eternity in my arms, drooling uncontrollably. Realizing the situation was precarious, I quickly took a step back, but unfortunately, my reaction was still a beat too slow. Immortal Fox, moving with lightning speed, lunged at me and snatched one of the fruits of eternity from my grasp. Spill it. How did you manage to steal a fruit of eternity from the Emperor Lord? Immortal Fox demanded, eyeing me suspiciously as she munched on the fruit. I hurriedly clutched the remaining 3 fruits of eternity tightly to my chest and raised my head proudly. Steal. What nonsense. These were clearly gifted to me by the Emperor Lord himself. Liar. Do you even know how many immortals spend their entire lives yearning for just one fruit of eternity? And you're saying the Emperor Lord gave you some? Not just one, but several. Immortal Fox's gaze was filled with doubt. I snorted in dissatisfaction at her attitude and puffed out my chest. Several. It's not that many, just 9, that's all. 9. Immortal Fox's expression changed drastically. She suddenly lunged at me, biting into the fruit in her mouth while grabbing me by the neck with both hands, muttering furiously, I'll strangle you, I'll strangle you. I was nearly seeing stars from her grip and struggled desperately to escape her clutches. Hugging the fruits of eternity, I dashed to one side and shouted angrily, Immortal Fox, what's wrong with you? Killing your own kind will get you struck by lightning. Ha! You're the one who deserves to be struck by lightning for eating so many fruits of eternity. Immortal Fox glared at the fruits in my arms, rubbing her hands together eagerly. I was so aggrieved. Immortal Fox, oh Immortal Fox, you've eaten so many of my chicken legs, and I've never tattled on you. If White Little Mountain knew, imagine how much trouble I'd be in. Yet here you are, cursing me over some lousy peaches. When this fox gets angry, the consequences are severe. I grabbed one fruit of eternity, took a big bite, and quickly leaped out the window, running straight to Jade Fairy's dawn-like garden. Just in time, I saw her transforming into a snake, slithering gracefully in the garden. I yelled loudly and tossed the other 2 fruits of eternity into her wide-open mouth. Jade Fairy, catch! I shouted, satisfied as I watched the 2 peaches slide right into her mouth. You wretched fox! How dare you rob Peter to pay Paul? Just wait until I deal with you. Witnessing this scene, Immortal Fox was so furious she went mad, chasing after me with the intent to pluck all my fur. Ignoring Jade Fairy, who was choking on the 2 peaches and tearing up, I bolted as fast as I could. Chapter 15, The Fox Fears the Cold. I discovered that Immortal Fox had mastered the ultimate scratching technique to an extraordinary level. She managed to pluck quite a bit of my fox fur, leaving me so embarrassed that I didn't dare to revert to my original form. Having only eaten 2 fruits of eternity, my strength hadn't improved much. However, I'd been feeling refreshed these past few days, able to go 3 days without eating and not feel hungry. That day, after sulking for a few days in Starlight Garden, Immortal Fox finally couldn't bear the solitude any longer and came to find me, bringing Jade Fairy along as well. The moment I spotted Jade Fairy, I instinctively stepped back, but Immortal Fox yanked me forward. She said, Sister, don't hide anymore. Thanks to your peaches, Jade Fairy has fully mastered her frost arts and can now control her icy aura. You don't need to avoid her anymore. Really? I looked suspiciously at Immortal Fox, then turned to Jade Fairy. She nodded, her expression as cold as ever. Relieved, I patted Immortal Fox's hand and laughed, why didn't you say so earlier? I've been too scared to sunbathe in the garden these past few days. So, why are you both here today? I wondered to myself. After some thought, I decided it was better to ask directly. My fox fur hadn't grown back yet, and I couldn't handle another incident. Immortal Fox rarely smiled gently, which somehow made my hair stand on end. Sister, didn't you give Jade Fairy 2 fruits of eternity the other day? She's here specifically to thank you. I didn't dare look at Immortal Fox. Just imagining it, I knew she was still upset about that matter. Instead, I turned to Jade Fairy, eyes wide with anticipation. No one had ever thanked me before. Jade Fairy's expression turned slightly awkward. She gave a small bow and said, "Thank you." As soon as the words left her mouth, I heard a strange sound. Jade Fairy's face shifted from shock to guilt and helplessness. Rolling my eyes, I resigned myself to the fact that I had been frozen solid again. "I'll help you thaw immediately," Jade Fairy said hastily. But the moment she opened her mouth, the ice around me thickened even more. Realizing this, Jade Fairy quickly covered her mouth, not daring to speak again. I glanced at Immortal Fox out of the corner of my eye and saw her laughing gleefully. She touched the ice on my head and said softly, "Sister, look at you. Didn't you eat 2 fruits of eternity? Why are you still so fragile?" I was furious. Immortal Fox, that wretched creature, was truly despicable. She was still holding a grudge over the fruits of eternity after all this time. Such a petty little fox. Jade Fairy gestured to Immortal Fox, signaling her to melt the ice. But Immortal Fox just patted the ice on my head and grinned. "Don't worry, Fairy. My sister is very robust. Being frozen once or twice is just like training. The weather's nice today, how about we take her out to the garden and let her thaw naturally?" With that, Immortal Fox hoisted me onto her shoulder and cheerfully carried me outside. She placed me under a large, shady tree, deliberately avoiding any sunny spots. After settling me down, she patted the ice on my face and said in a tone that was both sincere and smug, "Be good and stay here, all right? The ice isn't that thick, it'll melt in no time. Don't worry." I choked with anger. White Little Mountain used to tell me, ice 3 feet thick doesn't form in a day, but now I realize, ice 3 feet thick can appear in an instant, and even thicker than 3 feet. Immortal Fox is truly blind. "Stay here, little sister. Big sister is leaving first." Immortal Fox winked at me, then gracefully walked away, dragging along Jade Fairy, who was hesitating whether or not to speak. At this moment, I finally understood the kind of friends I had made. The coldness of the ice made me shiver uncontrollably, even freezing my heart. "Emperor Lord, save me." In my heart, I screamed your name. If it weren't for you insisting on bringing me to the heavenly realm, I wouldn't have to suffer like this. As I gritted my teeth in frustration, the ice on my body suddenly disappeared. My blurry eyes, clouded by the cold, seemed to catch sight of a figure in green. The unparalleled handsome face of the Emperor Lord flickered before me. "Wah, Emperor Lord, I want to go back to Cloudspire Mountain." I stiffly lunged forward, collapsing into his embrace, wiping my tears as I sobbed. The Emperor Lord frowned slightly, put his arms around me, and said, "Jade's cultivation is still low, she probably didn't mean to freeze you. Does Lyra Grace truly want to return because of this?" I rubbed my red nose against his chest and huffed, "You promised to help me find White Little Mountain. Why haven't you found him yet?" Hearing my words, the Emperor Lord's body suddenly stiffened. After a long pause, he sighed, "Lyra Grace, is staying by my side so difficult?" I didn't understand what he meant, feeling confused. Not knowing why he suddenly expressed such sentiment, I ignored it and continued, "I want to go back to Cloudspire Mountain. If Lyra Grace insists on leaving, I won't stop you. But today, you've been affected by Jade's cold energy. If it isn't fully dispelled, it could harm your body. How about soaking in the clear spring pool for half an hour to get rid of the cold energy before you leave?" After a moment, the Emperor Lord spoke slowly. I suddenly lifted my head, a spark of joy lighting up my face. I can go to the clear spring pool." "Really?" The Emperor Lord smiled and nodded. Without a second thought, I cast aside all my grievances and hurried straight to the Eastern Blossom Hall of the Emperor Lord. Under the astonished gazes of the celestial attendants, I stepped into the clear spring pool. Quickly shedding my clothes, I jumped into the pool with a splash. Warmth immediately spread throughout my body, dispelling all the cold. I sighed contentedly. The clear spring pool was truly a marvelous place. How stingy of the Emperor Lord to keep it all to himself. I joyfully soaked in the clear spring pool, thinking this was the true definition of luxury. It made me feel like I had wasted the past 2,000 years of my life. But as soon as the thought crossed my mind, I stopped myself. I had only just arrived in the heavenly realm, and I was already indulging like this. If White Little Mountain found out, he'd surely skin this fox alive. As soon as I thought of White Little Mountain, my cheerful mood instantly turned to sadness. I leaned against the fortress, closed my eyes, and drifted off. Lyra Grace, Lyra Grace. Your Majesty, no. The fire is too intense, Lyra Grace will surely perish. Your Majesty, the bewitching consort is a calamity to the nation, you must think carefully. Silence. All of you, leave me alone. Lyra Grace, wait for me. In a daze, chaotic sounds echoed in my ears. A dull ache began to spread in my head, and suddenly, a vision of flames appeared before me. The boundless sea of fire surged closer, its heat scorching my skin, the pain unbearable. Beyond the sea of fire, I saw a figure in green robes recklessly rushing toward me. Countless people tried to hold him back. Between us, the raging inferno stood as an unyielding barrier, preventing any approach. I struggled to open my eyes but couldn't make out his face clearly. All I could hear was his endless call, Lyra Grace, Lyra Grace. My heart suddenly tightened, as if the air had been sucked out. I felt as though I was teetering on the edge of death, desperately trying to grasp something yet unable to hold on to it. Foolish fox. You're outrageous, daring to sneak away with an immortal. Do you believe I won't skin you alive? White Little Mountain's face suddenly loomed large before me, as fierce as ever, but I couldn't help laughing joyfully. Little Mountain, White Little Mountain, you're finally back. If you hadn't returned, I would have gone with Immortal Fox to eat chicken drumsticks. I clung to White Little Mountain's arm, mumbling. Lyra Grace, is it so hard to stay by my side? White Little Mountain's face suddenly transformed into that of the Emperor Lord. He looked at me, his sorrowful expression startling me into letting go. Oh, Emperor Lord. Emperor Lord. Even in my dreams, you won't leave me alone, how infuriating you are. Lyra Grace, it seemed someone was calling me. Reluctantly, I opened my eyes and was met with the magnified, handsome face of the Emperor Lord. Startled, I jolted awake, glancing around to find myself lying on a bed, not even my own bed. I immediately jumped off, remembering White Little Mountain's words, a good fox shouldn't casually lie on someone else's bed. Emperor Lord, why am I here? Wasn't I soaking in the clear spring pond? I scratched my head in confusion, asking. The complexion of Emperor Lord was somewhat gloomy, but upon seeing me awake, a faint smile appeared in his eyes, clearly relieved. Hearing my question, he paused slightly and asked, do you not remember anything? I shook my head. Suddenly, Emperor Lord stepped closer, reached out to touch my forehead, and said, you fell into a dream curse and have been unconscious for 7 days. I widened my eyes, looking at him in disbelief, stammering, in no way. What kind of strange thing is a dream curse? I've lived for 2,000 years and never encountered it, yet here it is in the heavenly realm. Could it be that the feng shui of this place conflicts with me? What are you thinking? It's good that you've woken up. You must have been overthinking, which led to the dream curse. Emperor Lord seemed to see through my thoughts and said. I was stunned. Overthinking? Other than White Little Mountain, what else could make me think so much? He's my only family in this world, always by my side for over 1,000 years without leaving, and now he suddenly disappeared. If nothing happened, I would definitely scold him for worrying me, but if something really did happen to him, how would I live the days ahead? Yet, that's all I thought about. As for the dream of a sky engulfed in flames, the green silhouette, and the heart-wrenching cries, where did they come from? 2 days ago, a wandering immortal who practices alchemy joined Grand Supreme Elder Lord's residence. It seems to be a pheasant demon who has just successfully cultivated. I don't know what White Little Mountain looks like, but there's no harm in you going to check. Emperor Lord lowered his eyes and said calmly. I was startled, feeling an overwhelming joy as if it had fallen from the heavens. White Little Mountain, you are the most diligent pheasant in the world, it must be you, right? Chapter 16, The Fake Pheasant. After hearing Emperor Lord's words, I didn't bother reporting to Immortal Fox anymore. Instead, I excitedly grabbed Emperor Lord's hand, expressing my gratitude, and then hurriedly rushed to Grand Supreme Elder Lord's Doshui Palace. This was probably the fastest I've ever run in my life, even faster than when White Little Mountain and I used to flee from Immortal Fox's pursuit. In no time, I arrived at Doshui Palace, not caring whether there were guards at the entrance or not, storming in like a whirlwind. As I passed an open grassy area, I saw an elderly man with white hair and beard sitting on the back of a green ox, lowering his head and touching the ox all over with his hands. I had no idea what he was doing. I figured this must be Grand Supreme Elder Lord that Emperor Lord mentioned. Looking around, I realized how vast Doshui Palace was and calculated the odds of finding White Little Mountain on my own. After weighing my options to save time, I approached the old man. What are you doing? I asked curiously. Picking lice, Grand Supreme Elder Lord replied curtly without looking up. I was dumbfounded. Even Heavenly Realm's oxen have lice. No, Grand Supreme Elder Lord answered, but his hands didn't stop exploring. So why are you still picking lice? I approached the green ox, about to ask when it raised its head and snorted twice into my face. Startled, I stepped back 2 paces. Always refining pills gets boring, one must find some amusement, right? Grand Supreme Elder Lord replied nonchalantly. I was stunned, this Grand Supreme Elder Lord was indeed extraordinary, even his hobbies were so unique. As I stood there, mouth agape, eyes wide, staring up at him with an expression of reverent admiration, he suddenly noticed something was off. Abruptly, he raised his head, staring at me in a daze. His rosy face, adorned with a long white beard, showed a fleeting hint of embarrassment. I slowly composed myself, trying to stay calm as I looked at him, unsure of what to say. After a moment, Grand Supreme Elder Lord squinted his eyes. The dazed look vanished instantly, replaced by a lively expression. He laughed heartily. I wondered who it was, turns out to be Little Snowy. I heard you returned but didn't come to visit this old man. Weren't you with the Emperor Lord? What brings you here? I was surprised by his familiar tone, but Little Snowy must have referred to me. I opened my mouth. Little Snowy, it's good that you're back. Come, help me pick lice. It's been over 2,000 years since you last helped with my azure ox. He called joyfully, his attitude warm and his gaze sincere. Being someone who understands propriety, I obediently stepped forward and spent half a day picking lice with the Grand Supreme Elder Lord, though in reality, we didn't catch a single one. Once again, I marveled at how peculiar his hobbies were. After the 108th time I pretended to catch a louse, the Elder Lord finally ended this extracurricular activity. In high spirits, he jumped down from the back of the azure ox, patted its rump, and the ox soared into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Indeed, Little Snowy makes things more fun here. Look, we caught way more lice today than I did yesterday. Elder Lord stroked his beard, smiling with squinted eyes. I twitched the corner of my mouth, about to inquire about the whereabouts of White Little Mountain, when I saw him already heading toward the alchemy room with his bamboo cane. I hurried after him, asking as I walked, Elder Lord, I heard your palace recently welcomed a new rogue immortal. Oh, you mean the young lad helping me refine pills? Elder Lord replied casually. Hearing this, I grew anxious. Why a young lad? Isn't it supposed to be a wild pheasant? What wild pheasant? It's clearly a young lad. Elder Lord muttered to himself without even looking at me. Elder Lord, I told you I'm not a brat. My name is Noble Young Lord. At that moment, a fireball suddenly flew toward us. My face turned pale as I stared at the blazing fire, my mind going blank, unsure of how to react. Elder Lord gently lifted his bamboo staff, and the fireball immediately changed direction, flying into the room and landing right under the alchemy furnace. Brat, if you waste my samadhi true flame again, I'll toss you into the furnace for a few days. Elder Lord glared at the young man standing defiantly in the doorway, his beard puffing as he scolded. The sudden appearance of the fireball left me trembling, my heart racing, cold sweat dripping down. It took me a while to recover. When I finally looked up, I saw the young man deflate, his arrogant stance replaced with a pitiful expression as he whimpered, Elder Lord, my name really is Noble Young Lord. I'm a pheasant, not a brat. Elder Lord snorted, turning his head with the playful demeanor of a mischievous old man, chuckling, Little Snowy, I recently crafted a beauty nourishment pill. Look at you, after just one trip to the mortal realm, you've come back looking so haggard. You need to replenish yourself. Ignoring Elder Lord's disdainful remarks about my appearance, I walked straight to Noble Young Lord, who was still sulking, and glared at him. You, turn back into a pheasant. Perhaps startled by my serious expression, Noble Young Lord froze for a moment before obediently transforming into a pheasant. However, the more I looked, the more something seemed off. While he resembled a pheasant, he was nowhere near as magnificent as White Little Mountain. My hopes shattered in an instant. A surge of anger rose within me, and I lunged forward, grabbing Noble Young Lord and furiously plucking his feathers while wailing, You're a fake pheasant. A fake pheasant. White Little Mountain is so much better than you. How dare you pretend to be a pheasant? What kind of deity are you? So shameless. The alchemy room descended into chaos because of me. Even Elder Lord was startled by my outburst. Seeing that Noble Young Lord's feathers were almost entirely plucked, he hurriedly stopped me and, for once, asked seriously, Little Snowy, what's wrong with you? I glared at Noble Young Lord, who had reverted to his human form, looking utterly disheveled. Wiping my tears, I continued accusing him, he's not a pheasant. You've been deceived by him. Hearing this, Noble's face turned bright red as he jumped up and shouted, If I'm not a pheasant, then who is? I'm the real deal. Anyone who says otherwise, I'll fight them to the end. That's right, Little Snowy. Isn't he a pheasant? Why are you saying he's not? Elder Lord asked, puzzled. I sniffled and replied, but compared to White Little Mountain, he's far inferior. White Little Mountain is so much more beautiful than him. Who is White Little Mountain? Another pheasant? Elder Lord continued his questioning. I nodded, still glaring at Noble Young Lord. Noble pouted, blinked once, and immediately threw himself at Elder Lord's feet, clutching his leg while crying, Elder Lord, you must stand up for me, you must. You can't let people bully me like this. Elder Lord looked at me with a troubled expression, coughed twice, and finally spoke, Little Snowy, although I also think this brat is no good, well, ahem, in reality, he's already the most handsome one in the entire wild chicken clan. His whole family is full of ugly ones, and it's rare to have such a masterpiece like him. You'll just have to accept it. But White Little Mountain is more handsome than him. I mumbled, his feathers are indescribably beautiful, multicolored, and even shimmering with gold. Humph. Nonsense, I've never seen a wild chicken with shimmering gold feathers. Noble got up from the ground and retorted. You. I glared at him. Noble Young Lord immediately took a few steps back tactfully but still refused to give up, You're saying he's not even a wild chicken. I, a noble celestial chicken, am already the most beautiful wild chicken in the 3 realms. Unless it's a phoenix, no chicken can surpass me. Phoenix? What does a phoenix look like? As a fox, I had never seen a phoenix in my life, so I couldn't imagine it. Look over there, isn't that the 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix painting? The phoenix is the most beautiful bird in it. Noble young lord pointed to a corner of the alchemy room. I followed his gaze, and my eyes suddenly lit up. I shouted, "White Little Mountain! Look, that's White Little Mountain! See? He's much more beautiful than noble young lord." For a long moment, there was no sound. I turned my head back and saw noble young lord and elder lord looking at me with eyes full of pity. "What's wrong?" I asked, puzzled. Elder lord shook his head, "Little Snowy, that's a phoenix. I told you, no wild chicken could ever be more beautiful than me." Noble young lord pouted and looked at me with disdain. I froze, taking a long time to process their words in my head, before stammering, "You mean White Little Mountain is a phoenix?" The 2 of them nodded in unison. "Impossible." I immediately denied it. "Are you kidding me? I've known White Little Mountain for nearly 2,000 years now. How could I not tell whether he's a wild chicken or a phoenix? Besides, he himself said he's a wild chicken." "Little Snowy, everything in this world has its possibilities," Elder Lord patted my shoulder, speaking with profound meaning. Noble young lord tilted his face toward the sky, slowly sighing with emotion. I remember back then, before I had fully cultivated my form, there was a time when I was eating, and suddenly, a beautiful wild chicken came running to snatch my food. That little one must have hit its head and forgotten who it was. Seeing that I looked somewhat like it, it asked me what kind of demon I was. At the time, I was still young and thought that, though it looked a bit better than most, it was essentially still a wild chicken. So, I told it that we were of the wild chicken clan and that we must be careful not to get caught by foxes, or else we'd be eaten with not even a bone left. That little one was so honest that I ended up giving it all my food. Back then, I thought, for the wild chicken clan to have such an honest child, heaven must truly have eyes. A few hundred years later, after I had cultivated into human form and ventured out to experience the world, I discovered that the little one wasn't a wild chicken at all, it was a phoenix. TSK, such a pity. A little one who loved plain rice so much, yet it wasn't a wild chicken. After expressing his sentiment, noble young lord gazed at the sky for a moment longer before lowering his head to look at us. I bit my lip, clenched and unclenched my fists, and finally couldn't hold back anymore. I charged toward noble young lord, shouting, "I'll kill you! I'll kill you! So it was you who harmed White Little Mountain! You despicable wretch! You shameless scoundrel! How could you have wronged White Little Mountain like this?" Chapter 17, The Fox's Revenge, 3 days is not too late. Noble young lord was ultimately driven mad by my relentless scratching, helplessly jumping into elder lord's alchemy furnace. Still unsatisfied, I sat outside the furnace, tirelessly adding fire. I kept fueling the flames for an entire day until elder lord repeatedly persuaded me to stop. Only after confirming that noble young lord had turned into a roasted chicken did I reluctantly return to ethereal. White Little Mountain suddenly transformed into a phoenix, soaring to the treetops. This news left me dumbfounded. A phoenix is a divine beast, yet he had diligently cultivated for 2,000 years, dreaming daily of becoming an immortal. No wonder his cultivation progressed so rapidly. However, I still couldn't understand, how could a genuine phoenix love eating plain rice so much? Living with him for 2,000 years, I never realized he was such a radiant phoenix. Sigh, I thought I was clever all my life, only to lose to White Little Mountain's true species. I heaved a deep sigh and returned to Blue Blossom Courtyard. Standing at the door for a long while, I eventually wandered over to Emperor Lord's Eastern Blossom Hall. "What's the matter?" Emperor Lord, who had been meditating in the room, stood up and approached me as I entered without knocking. White Little Mountain is a phoenix, not a wild chicken, I said, looking into his clear eyes. Emperor Lord was briefly stunned but soon understood. After a moment of thought, he said, recently, there's been news from the Phoenix clan. They've found traces of the Crown Prince among mortals and have already brought him back to the Phoenix clan. Perhaps the one you're referring to as White Little Mountain is indeed him. The Crown Prince of the Phoenix clan? 1700 years ago, Crown Prince Phoenix Grace had just turned 500. At that time, the ferocious winged beast was wreaking havoc in the mortal realm. The elders of the Phoenix clan wanted to train Phoenix Grace, so they sent him to subdue the ferocious winged beast. Phoenix Grace's cultivation was still weak back then, and after a fierce battle, the ferocious winged beast was gravely injured, while Phoenix Grace underwent a nirvana transformation into a phoenix, disappearing without a trace. Over nearly 2,000 years, the Phoenix clan has been searching for him. However, Phoenix Grace's divine power mysteriously vanished, making it impossible even for the Phoenix clan elders to sense him. It wasn't until recently, during a discussion with the Phoenix clan elders, that I learned he had been found, Emperor Lord explained calmly, summarizing everything concisely. 1700 years ago was also when I first met White Little Mountain. I muttered, realizing he was a phoenix, but I hadn't expected him to be such an extraordinary one, let alone the crown prince of the Phoenix clan. Phoenix Grace, what a grand name, far more fitting than White Little Mountain. That explains it. Emperor Lord affirmed. If White Little Mountain is at the Phoenix clan, then let's go find him. I excitedly tugged at Emperor Lord's sleeve. Emperor Lord looked at me and replied, Phoenix Grace is currently in seclusion, cultivating in the holy land of the Phoenix clan. Even the elders cannot meet him. Huh. Then what should we do? How long will he be in seclusion? I'll wait. My excitement instantly deflated, and I asked dejectedly. Thousands of years at most, hundreds at least. Someone said, pouring cold water straight into my heart, leaving me speechless. 1,000 years? I, Snow Lyra, have only lived for 2,000 years so far. Although for the demon race, 1,000 years is but a fleeting moment in their endless lifespan, for me, it feels unbearably long, so long that I don't know how to endure 1,000 years without White Little Mountain. I closed my eyes, my heart heavy. Lyra Grace, if you truly wish to wait for someone, even 1,000 years wouldn't feel long, Emperor Lord spoke, seeing through my thoughts. His bright eyes gazed at me with an inexplicable mix of sorrow and joy. Really? Yes, if you sincerely wish to wait for someone, even 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or until heaven and earth grow old, you will calmly live through those days, just because there's someone worth waiting for. The Emperor Lord turned away, his tall figure exuding an air of solitude and loneliness. His voice was gentle yet carried a comforting strength. I looked at him, my heart gradually calming, and asked, Emperor Lord, have you ever waited for someone too? He paused for a moment, but only briefly, before returning to his composed demeanor and replied, I once waited for 2,000 years. I was startled. I didn't expect the Emperor Lord to also be a devoted lover, so I continued to ask, did you manage to wait for her? The Emperor Lord finally turned back to look at me, a faint smile gracing his lips as he softly said, I waited for her, but not for her heart. So, I am still waiting. Is it the beauty in the portrait of the beauty? I seized the opportunity to quickly ask the question that had been on my mind all this time. Yes. I clicked my tongue in wonder. Who exactly is this beauty with such captivating charm that she could linger in the Emperor Lord's heart for so long? From what I know, the Emperor Lord has always been a god of detachment and indifference. Yet, at this moment, he seems more devoted than even the 7 fairy sisters. Thinking so, I tiptoed closer, patted Emperor Lord on the shoulder, and sincerely comforted him, Emperor Lord, don't be sad. From today on, I've decided to wait with you. You wait for your beauty, and I'll wait for my white little mountain. See? With me by your side, you won't feel hopeless anymore, right? Emperor Lord looked at me, his deep and unreadable gaze seemingly carrying a hint of despair and sorrow. As I looked at him, I felt the smile on my lips become ethereal, as if with just a blink, he would vanish. My heart stirred slightly, and my hand unconsciously reached out to touch his face. His skin was so smooth and carried a coolness that made my hand go cold. I snapped back to reality, startled, and quickly withdrew my hand, smacking my head hard. How could I let myself be captivated by Emperor Lord's beauty? That was so inappropriate. Emperor Lord, I'll be going back now. Not daring to look at him any longer, I dashed out of the Eastern Blossom Hall as fast as I could, chanting, Amitba, in my heart, afraid I might accidentally offend him again. Back at Blue Blossom Courtyard, I sat on my bed, counting the days. Who knows how long White Little Mountain will stay in seclusion, but having hope is better than nothing. Once he comes out, I'll definitely give him 2 good kicks to avenge being abandoned. Then I'll interrogate him about that beautiful female Taoist. If the 2 of them are really destined, I'll lure her to find another man and make him wear a green hat. While cracking my knuckles and counting the days, I gritted my teeth, plotting how to punish that traitor, White Little Mountain. Lost in thought, I suddenly felt a chill. Just as I was about to pull up the blanket, I looked up and saw Jade Fairy sitting at the head of the bed, staring at me intently. Startled, I rolled off the bed. I didn't want to be frozen stiff again. It seemed Jade Fairy had anticipated my reaction. She slightly opened her mouth, and I immediately tensed up, preparing myself to be frozen again, putting on a heroic stance to face death. Surprisingly, she closed her mouth instead. I let out a sigh of relief. Seeing me look at her, Jade Fairy waved her sleeve, and a white mist appeared in the air. Large white letters emerged, Immortal Fox is in trouble. I was stunned. So there's this kind of communication method? Jade Fairy is truly clever. But what kind of trouble could Immortal Fox possibly be in? Follow me, and you'll see. Jade Fairy seemed very anxious. After writing, she hurriedly walked out. Although Immortal Fox had done some shameful things to me, I generously decided to follow Jade Fairy. When we arrived at Immortal Fox's Starlight Garden, I immediately saw her sprawled on the ground like a corpse, with a large chicken drumstick still in her mouth. Jade Fairy quickly waved her sleeve in the air, and I instantly understood the whole story. It turned out that after Kitchen God witnessed countless divine chickens being devoured by Immortal Fox, he couldn't endure her oppression any longer. He rebelled by cursing the chicken drumstick, making it so that after eating it, Immortal Fox couldn't move. If she still desired to eat chicken drumsticks in her heart, she would remain immobilized but conscious. Thus, as soon as I entered, Immortal Fox's eyes lit up brightly upon seeing me. However, only Immortal Fox and I knew that the reason her eyes lit up wasn't because she was touched that I came to save her, but because she knew I would definitely take revenge for what happened a few days ago. Not disappointing her expectations, I managed to trick Jade Fairy into giving me a large tub of ice, then patted my chest and assured her I'd ensure Immortal Fox would be fine, coaxing Jade Fairy to return to Dawnlight Garden. And so, the grand revenge officially began. As soon as Jade Fairy left, I grinned mischievously, squatted down, and leaned closer to Lovely. In front of Immortal Fox, I pinched her cheek and said, "Sister, there's a saying, you reap what you sow, see how quickly karma comes back around." Immortal Fox glared at me, her mouth still stuffed with a chicken drumstick, looking both annoyed and ridiculously amusing. I rummaged through the wooden barrel and pulled out an ice chunk about the size of a chicken drumstick. Snatching the drumstick from Immortal Fox's mouth, I shoved the ice chunk in instead and laughed smugly, "Sister, does this ice taste better than the drumstick?" Immortal Fox kept glaring. Ignoring her, I grabbed her legs and started dragging her off the ground. She was stronger than me, so I couldn't carry her, and instead, I dragged her along the floor toward a large wooden bath barrel. On the way, her head accidentally banged against a table leg with a loud thud, but I paid no mind. After much effort, I managed to toss Immortal Fox into the barrel. I patted the sizable bump on her forehead and sighed regretfully, "Sister, look at what you've done. Why did you force your little sister to resort to such lowly measures?" Immortal Fox's eyes glistened with tears, probably from hitting her head on the table leg. So, I pinched the bump on her forehead hard, and sure enough, she burst into tears. I still ignored her and ran off to fetch a bucket of ice. Looking at Immortal Fox, I sneered twice and raised the bucket high. With a loud splash, the icy water poured all over Immortal Fox. Seeing her utterly miserable expression, as if she had suffered internal injuries, I felt immensely satisfied. I sat down next to the large wooden barrel, swinging my legs, and asked, "Sister, if your little sister lets you go, do you promise never to seek revenge? If you promise, blink your eyes." Immortal Fox immediately blinked furiously as if having a spasm, even shedding a few tears. Feeling her sincerity, I jumped down, grabbed the blanket from her bed, and draped it over the wooden barrel, leaving only her eyes exposed. "Sister, see how kind your little sister is. I know you're cold, so I covered you with a blanket." Immortal Fox's face remained tear-streaked, her expression utterly sorrowful. "You've promised now, no revenge, all right?" I emphasized once more before strutting out of Starlight Garden. Walking back to Moonfall Garden with a triumphant grin, I thought to myself, a fox seeking revenge. 3 days is not too late. Chapter 18, Elder Lord's Beauty Elixir. I began counting the days, watching the sun rise and set each day, waiting for White Little Mountain to emerge. Emperor Lord had gone to the Purple Star Garden in the Arctic heavens, engaging in unknown matters with Polaris Emperor. Since my return to the Blue Blossom Courtyard, I had yet to see him again. Evergreen Pine mentioned that Emperor Lord and Northern Star Lord were close confidants in the immortal realm, often discussing the Tao together. However, it had been a long time since Emperor Lord last visited the Purple Star Garden, so this time it must be something important. With Emperor Lord absent, the clear spring pond felt like it belonged solely to me, which was my only solace. However, if Immortal Fox sought revenge again, Emperor Lord might not appear in time to save me, a thought that left me troubled. Thankfully, Jade Fairy mediated between us, and Immortal Fox and I managed to reconcile. That day, feeling bored at the Blue Blossom Courtyard, I decided to accompany Immortal Fox and Jade Fairy to the Dusu Palace of Elder Lord, planning to help him catch lice for Azure Ox, humor his peculiar hobbies, and incidentally check if the well-roasted, noble young lord had changed at all. "Little Snowy, are you planning to add more fire to my alchemy furnace this time?" Elder Lord, riding on Azure Ox, spotted me from afar. I smiled and approached, patting Azure Ox's head. "I'm here to help you catch lice." Elder Lord stroked his beard and chuckled, though his expression clearly showed disbelief. I glanced around. "Huh, where's noble young lord?" Elder Lord cast his gaze toward the door. "It smelled you from afar and ran off. Do you think it would dare stay here?" I pouted. "What a cowardly pheasant. Oh, by the way, little Snowy, come here. Last time, I meant to give you a beauty pill but forgot. Here, try it." Elder Lord retrieved a small gourd from his chest, poured out a 5-colored pill, and handed it to me, his face brimming with anticipation, his eyes sparkling like a child's. "Oh, Elder Lord, do you dislike my appearance that much?" Immortal Fox stood beside me, laughing gleefully. "Little sister, hurry up and take it. Eat it. Elder Lord's beauty elixir isn't something just anyone can get. Hayes, if it weren't for the fact that your elder sister here was born naturally beautiful, I'd really want to ask Elder Lord for one too." I felt annoyed. Immortal Fox always took every opportunity to get the better of me. Jade Fairy waved her hand, and large words appeared in midair. "Lyra Grace, eat it." I glanced at Elder Lord, who looked delighted, then at Immortal Fox, who was laughing at my expense, and finally at Jade Fairy, whose face was full of anticipation. Gritting my teeth, I grabbed the pill and shoved it into my mouth. After swallowing, I quickly covered my face with both hands, feeling a five-colored light radiate from between my fingers. I shut my eyes tightly. Oh no, was I about to turn into a tabby cat face? After a long moment, Elder Lord motioned for me to lower my hands. At first, I refused, but Immortal Fox forcefully pulled them away. I looked at Elder Lord, whose eyes curved in amusement. Now this is how little Snowy should look. Much more pleasing to the eye. You've only been through reincarnation once, yet you ended up with a face like that? Thankfully, Elder Lord here has the beauty elixir, what a shame it would have been otherwise. I was struck by Elder Lord's blunt criticism. I might not be a peerless beauty, but I was at least charming enough. How could I not meet Elder Lord's standards? I touched my face but didn't feel anything unusual. Turning to look at Immortal Fox, I saw her staring at me, wide-eyed, as if she'd seen a ghost. I moved closer and grinned cheekily. Hee, elder sister, are you stunned by how beautiful your little sister is now? Immortal Fox snapped out of her daze, saw my smug expression, and snorted disdainfully. Even Emperor Lord hasn't made me lose my composure, let alone you. Keep dreaming. I huffed. Judging by her reaction, there was no way she wasn't stunned. To confirm my suspicion, I took a small mirror from my pocket, held it up to my face, and immediately startled myself. I quickly put the mirror away. It turned out I had accidentally grabbed the true form mirror my father had crafted, which showed me with a furry fox face. Taking a deep breath, I pulled out another mirror and carefully checked my reflection. I froze instantly. Was this me? The effect of the beauty elixir was truly astonishing. The face in the mirror only vaguely resembled my old one. In fact, it was an entirely unfamiliar face. If I had been a delicate beauty before, now I had become a stunning, peerless beauty, one even more striking than Immortal Fox. My eyes and lashes carried a charm I'd never possessed before, yet it was soft, pure, like a white peony, radiant and serene. However, as I stared at this face, a strange feeling crept over me, as though I had seen it somewhere long ago. Deep inside, I felt an inexplicable aversion to its existence. I glared at the mirror for a long time, and Elder Lord's smug voice rang out above me, well, little Snowy. Are you satisfied? I pressed my lips together, refusing to answer. What's wrong? Jade Fairy wrote a few words in the air, her usually stoic face showing a hint of confusion. I tilted my head up to look at Elder Lord and asked gloomily, can I change back? Elder Lord almost tumbled off the back of the Azure Ox. After calming himself, he asked, hey, little Snowy, you're still so young, yet your eyesight is already failing. I closed my eyes, ignoring Elder Lord's words, and said, I still prefer my old face, Elder Lord. Can you help me change back? Elder Lord ignored my plea and replied, little Snowy, don't overthink things. Frustrated, I grabbed his pant leg and tried another approach. Elder Lord, if you don't turn me back, I'll roast noble young lord. As soon as I finished speaking, a noise came from the entrance of the hall of Do Shui, as if someone had fallen. Elder Lord glanced at the door, then back at me, and sighed, little Snowy, I only know how to refine beauty pills, not disfigurement pills. Even if I wanted to, I have no way to turn you back. I felt dejected and regretful. I shouldn't have given in and eaten that beauty pill. White Little Mountain had warned me, women who are too beautiful bring calamity and may never marry. It's over, I'm doomed to be single. Heartbroken, I left the hall of Do Shui, paying no attention to noble young lord, who had just snuck in. I was too consumed with self-blame. Immortal Fox, unusually quiet today, occasionally glanced back at me with a hesitant expression, as if wanting to say something but holding back. I didn't bother to care and just hoped she wouldn't cause trouble for me. Jade Fairy walked silently beside me, occasionally casting worried glances in my direction. Peony sister. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out. I looked up to see Peach Fairy approaching, her tear-filled eyes fixed on me. Startled, I instinctively wanted to run, but Peach Fairy blocked my path, grabbing my hand and exclaiming emotionally, "Sister, you've finally returned. I knew it, you couldn't bear to leave me, could you?" I stared at her in a daze, unsure of what to say. Should I tell her I'm not Peony Fairy? But Emperor Lord said I am. Should I admit I'm Peony Fairy? But I clearly am not. What a headache. Peony sister, it's been over 2,000 years since you last visited Floral Palace, hasn't it? Today, all the sisters are gathered, and everyone is eager to see you.